let's go back to the brothers. So remember that we have these questions left over from last time, and they are and I said them very quickly and cryptically last time. Now let me remind you more. Remember that in the way back, once upon a time, when we were doing the Grand Inquisitor, there was always an antinomy in which Jesus represented one view, namely the Protestant extreme Kierkegaardian view, and the Grand Inquisitor represented the sort of philosophically influenced Roman Catholic view, and they were both wrong from the way each one could show that the other one was terrible and propose. And there was somewhere in the book going to be a third possibility which resolves antinomies, which shows that you don't have to take either of these bad views, and they can't argue for themselves by showing that the other view is even worse, because there's a view that's fine, and that's the Russian Orthodox. But we haven't got the answer to what the church would be, what a religious community would be. The Jesus figure says you can't have any community. Everyone has to directly relate to God. That's why confession is bad, but that's why, remember, the last thing Kierkegaard wrote, I told you, was the attack on Christendom. That's why the whole Lutheran church is bad. It gets in between people and their private, personal, direct relation to God. Very Protestant way of thinking about it. But the Grand Inquisitor view looks equally bad. He wants to turn the world into a universal ant-heap. That is, by which he means we'll have an objective truth, a creed that everybody in Christendom will subscribe to. It'll be a bunch of claims or principles or truths. You can write them down in the creed, and everybody will agree that that's the truth, that, that Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary and did this and this and saved everybody in this way and so forth. And that would make everybody just a sort of making religion a kind of conformism. And that doesn't seem right. So what is the right answer to to what is a church and what is a community? That's one question left. Another question nobody's solved or even tried yet, and the Grand Inquisitor doesn't really take it on, is what is immortality? What happens to people when they die? Then remember, that's left over from the fact that both old Karamazov and Mrs. Holocaust confessed that that's what really drives them crazy, is the worry about what happens when you die. So we have to have some story about that. And all through it, we've been giving, on third point, through the whole book, we've been giving meanings to the Karamazov, and the Karamazov has always stood for the dark side, the animal, the impulsive and sensuous and so forth, earthy, and now we're going to find out the right way to think about what it is to be a Karamazov. And finally, we're going to discover how in the third stage we're going to get a hint anyway, of how in the third stage Christianity is going to go out into the world and save the world, so that the star will arise in the east. Russian Orthodox Christianity will finally transform everybody, and we will be in paradise here and now. That's the promise. He doesn't say in detail how it's going to work or when it's going to happen, but he gives you a hint about how it's going to work and how it's going to happen. Okay, a lot to do in an hour and 5 minutes. It's even more amazing that Dostoevsky does it in one chapter at the end of the book. He takes on all these questions and gives his answer to them. So here we go. So Kolya, we got to start with the fact that Alyosha gets related to a bunch of boys by way of Kolya, who is important because he's sort of the young Russia, the future of Russia. And there is this sort of struggle over his soul between the usual angel and the devil. I think maybe it just occurs to me, the more important people have the more important angels and the more important devils fighting over their soul. So over Dmitri, it's head-on Rakitin with Alyosha, the head devil against the head angel, and it is over Kolya, too. Alyosha and Rakitin are competing for Kolya's allegiance, for his soul. And you can see this on 524. Okay, 524. Well, he's just talking to Kolya, and Kolya's, but it's just an interesting conversation. I mean, I was looking to see how the place where you can see that they're competing is a little further. But they're talking about God, and Kolya's saying in the middle of the page, God is only a hypothesis, and I admit he's needed, and blah, 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 and Kolya has trying to show off. And then he says, it's possible for one who doesn't believe in God to love mankind, don't you think? Voltaire didn't believe in God, and he loved mankind. And he thinks to himself, I'm at it again. And the interesting thing is, I just read it because it's interesting and confirms the view that God is the connectedness. Because Alyosha answers, Voltaire believed in God, though not very much, I think, and I don't think he loved mankind very much either. Which means sort of the amount of you believe in God and the amount you love mankind and feel the connectedness is the same. And that it's something you're used to. It's just a new angle on it. God is the field of relatedness. So, but the crucial thing for the angel devil is that Kolya admits on page 525 that he got all this talk from Rakitin. He says that about 2/3 of the way down. It happens that I have often talked to Rakitin, the divinity student, and so forth and so forth. And so they're fighting over whether Kolya is going to be a Christian of this new secularized, outside the monastery sort, or whether he's going to be the new man of the socialist sort, who believes in neurons and materialism and selfishness for everybody, and that Rakitin believes in. And he gives a kind of parody of the kind of socialism that, where is it, 528? Well, I don't really have much of a quote. It's just that it's again clear that Rakitin's the devil. The middle of 528, Alyosha says, the devil has taken the form of vanity and entered in the whole generation. It's the devil, added Alyosha, without a trace of the smile. That's when Alyosha is sort of head-on fighting Rakitin. And he saves Kolya in just the way that he saved Grushenka. In a way, it's sort of almost boring. I mean, it's so similar. Dostoevsky might have come up with something different, but he just reruns the fact that Grushenka needed to be affirmed as really a worthwhile person to be able to love and do worthwhile things. And the same thing happens on 527 with Kolya about 2/3 of the way down. Kolya asks about his vanity and willfulness that he can't get rid of. And he says, and Alyosha says, no, you have a good nature, but it's been distorted by Rakitin. And I understand now why you have had such an influence on the sensitive boy, on Ilusha, and all the boys. Kolya's the leader of the boys. That's why it's so important, the struggle for him. And Kolya says, you say that to me, cried Kolya. Would you believe it? I thought several times since I've been here that you despised me. If you only knew how I prized your opinion. Does that sound familiar? It's exactly the same thing that happened with Grushenka. She cared so much for Alyosha's opinion, and when she discovered that he didn't despise her, she could do good things. And immediately Kolya starts being an angel for Ilusha. And Smerzhikov was the devil for Ilusha, because Smerzhikov taught Ilusha to put the pin in the dog food in the meat and throw it, and then so the dog ate the meat and then went around howling from the pin in his stomach. And Ilusha feels terrible about that, and Ilusha is dying. And Kolya is trying to, we'll try to show him, we'll give him the impression anyway before he dies, that the dog hadn't really died. But the main thing is that he's feeling terrible because on 507, you learn that Smerzhikov has taught him to put the pin in the bread. And in the end, the boys, thanks to Kolya, bring another dog, and Ilusha, who's dying of TB, dies happily. And now, that's just background. I mean, it's helpful. It's not irrelevant. But now the really big issues arise. The church and the issue of immortality and how to save Russia. So and that's all fought around Ilyusha's death. So the first thing to notice, and this is just Dostoevsky at his best, and critics at their worst, is that just as the critics seem to think stupidly that Smerzhikov repents because he's reading this religious book, so, and Dostoevsky seems to lay the trap for the critics. After all, he didn't have to put the sayings of Isaac the Syrian in the day that Smerzhikov had been reading it, but he certainly is, it's sort of like a test to see if you can understand what's going on. Well, here's another test. What turns out that on the bottom of 722, strange to say, there was no smell of decay from the corpse. Now, Ilyusha's died. He's there, lying there before he's buried, and his body is smelling sweet. And now, does that show that Ilyusha is a saint and that there's something wrong with Zosima? That's what critics think. They immediately think, well, Dostoevsky wouldn't have put that in there if he didn't say that it didn't mean that in some way Ilyusha is better than Zosima, that Zosima has some flaw that Ilyusha doesn't, and then they worry around trying to find it. What's really going on there? You know? Why is Ilyusha's body smelling sweet in a way that Zosima's didn't? Yes, flowers. Who said that? Good. Yes, at the top of the chapter, he goes out of the way to say that the little flower-decked coffin. But it's not just flowers. Anything else? Yeah. What? Yes. I couldn't find the reference, but I believe the windows. I am too. Somewhere, if somebody ever finds the windows are open, let me know. But more. What else? Yeah. It's season. It's cold. The frost is on the ground. It's cold in autumn, apparently in Russia, not surprisingly. So it's cold, whereas it was a warm autumn evening. Autumn seems to be an uneven month. When Zosima died, we're told that the flowers were blooming. But at this time, we're told it was cold autumn and there was frost on the flowers. And one more thing. What else? Well, this one is you have to read between the lines. Yeah. Exactly. He doesn't bother to say they washed the body, but he bothers to say that they didn't wash Zosima's body. So now you run through it. Why does Zosima's body stink? It wasn't washed, the windows were closed, it was warm, and there were no flowers. And why does Ilyusha's body smell sweet? And it's not strange to say at all that we just ran through them. Washed, cold, flowers, windows open. And what's the moral of that? The critics miss, and that Dostoevsky is clear about. What are you supposed to conclude? Yeah. That's right. There's nothing that goes against the laws of physics and chemistry. The laws of physics and chemistry explain completely what goes on with the bodies. The laws of physics and chemistry aren't in the existential judgment of the goodness of these people's business. And Dostoevsky makes that clear in this neat way. So, let's see now. So they're both saints in a way, but that is Zosima and Ilyusha, because they bring agape love help bring agape love into the world. Ilyusha brings out the love in the boys as he dies so nicely, as Markel brings out and expresses the love when he dies, and so forth. And otherwise, it's just plain natural. The laws of chemistry of physics and chemistry are inexorable but irrelevant, to put it in a nutshell. That's what Dostoevsky thinks. And both deaths create miracles of love. We have seen it, remember, that Zosima's death turns Alyosha's love free to go on to be shot at Grushenka, as Rakitin says, and that saves Grushenka, and it's a miracle, we're told by Rakitin, and so forth. And we aren't told that Ilyusha is a miracle, but he also generates love in all these boys, and that has a wonderful effect, different than a miracle, a new effect. And what is that new effect? Well, first, for those who are Christians, you'll get it with Dostoevsky. You always are looking what's going on when they bury Alyosha. And the speech, the funeral speech on 7/22. Well, the funeral speech is given at the stone, Alyosha's favorite stone. And does that already remind anybody who knows the New Testament of anything? Somebody must know. Peter gets the keys to the kingdom to found the church at a rock from Jesus. And so you're there, bang, over your head. Something's happening at this rock, and what's happening at this rock has something to do with the founding of a church. But the more, almost like a joke, how many boys were present? 12 of them, right? It says so at the top of 7/22. That's interesting. There were 12 disciples. So there we are. I mean, Dostoevsky's not messing around. He's telling you head on. He's now going to tell you about the founding of a church as in its existential meaning. Nothing magical is going to happen, but something very important is going to happen. And how does it work? Well, the last pages show you how it works, or in a certain sense, Alyosha produces it, makes it work. He produces a religious community at the burial. So let's go to that. He's talking on the very important speech. Dostoevsky packs a lot into it on 7/27. He says, there's Alyosha's stone under which they wanted to bury him. They all stood by the big stone. And then he makes the speech, boys, we shall soon part. I shall be for some time with my 2 brothers, one of whom is going to Siberia, the other is lying at death's door. That's where we know. I never noticed that before. I knew Ivan was dying. We were told that he looked like a dying man when he testified in court, but I hadn't really realized that he is dying. Of course, he doesn't die. I read you the passage last time. But he's lying at death's door. He's certainly the kind of crucifixion that doesn't give you new life and resurrection. And I don't know what saves him, but he's just barely saved. But, okay, he says, soon I shall leave town for a long time, so we shall part. Let us make a compact here at Alyosha's stone that we will never forget Alyosha and one another. And whatever happens to us, and now there's a whole long speech that's important, in later life, even if we don't meet for 20 years, let's remember how we buried the poor boy at whom we once threw stones. Then he talks more about all that. And at the top of 7/28, and we will remember him, boys, all our lives. And even if we are occupied with important things, even if we attain honor and fall into misfortune, let us remember how good it was once here when we were all together, united by good and kind feelings. Now, what's he doing? You recognize something from very early in the book coming back? And again, Dostoevsky is so clear, he tells you it's coming back. Exactly. He's creating a childhood memory. He's creating a shared memory, but not which is going to be something that will remain the same meaning for them all through their lives. So there you're skipping a little. You must know there is nothing higher and stronger and more wholesome and good in life in the future than some good memory, especially a memory of childhood. He's telling you. People talk to you a great deal about your education, but some good sacred memory, we'll talk in a minute why it's sacred, preserved from childhood is perhaps the best education. If a man carries many such memories into life, he's saved to the end of his days. Now, why is it sacred? What's its relation to the other moments of time? Remember when we discussed it way back in Kierkegaard already? It's the same thing as the Augenblick, the instant in Kierkegaard. That's a sacred moment. Yeah. It's eternity and time. Right. Oh, you're all on the good things today. Right. And to say it's eternity and time means that whereas usually, remember I drew that on the board, it's so important to Dostoevsky and to Kierkegaard that there are these moments and they are constantly giving a significance, and then you retroactively change the significance. When something bad happens, you come here, it's great, then something bad happens to you here, and you retroactively think it was a disaster that you came here, and then by the time you graduate, you think you had a wonderful 4 years. But you can go on redefining your experience forever. Well, forever is the wrong thing to say. Constantly. But if you have one of these super experiences, they don't get redefined. They help you redefine everything else. No matter what happens to you, it never will get redefined if this works, that you had this memory, that you were once good and pure and loving and loved Ilusha, and Ilusha loved you. No matter what temptations you face, no matter what terrible mistakes you make, you'll never be reinterpreting that experience. It will reinterpret all your other experiences. Let me just read a little more. Together at this stone, the cruelest and most mocking of us, if we do become so, will not dare to laugh at having been kind and good at this moment. Interestingly enough, Nietzsche defines the sacred as something at which you don't dare to laugh. And that this is, it's total seriousness, this moment. What's more, perhaps, than that one memory may keep us from great evil, and so forth. We'll reflect and say, yes, I was good and brave and honest then, and so forth. And now he begins to turn it into eternity and time on the top of 729, where he says, about 10 lines down, may his memory, see, he's now saying, Ilusha, the good boy, the dear boy, precious to us forever. Let us never forget him. May his memory live in our hearts, forever in our hearts. Now, remember that forever is the name in Dostoevsky for eternity and time. It means existentialized eternity. It means not some kind of eternity like in Plato, where the number two numbers are eternal, and then the fact that triangles have 180 degrees is eternal. This is a kind of existential eternal. It's true for your whole life, from the past and to the end of your life. And so, forever is his name for the sacred, and it's his name for the eternal. So, may his memory live forever in our hearts. Yes, yes, forever, the boys cried in their ringing voices. Now, you notice something happening there. This sort of, he says this and then they echo it. We remember that we'll always remember, cried the boys, he was brave, he was good, how we loved him, and so forth. And now, that's just to sort of make it like a church service. I mean, Alyosha makes these claims and then the boys echo them. And the whole thing defines them as a community, defined by this experience, the sacred experience of having formed this sacred memory together over the death of Ilusha. And then skipping down. But now we need to know, what's this guy, have we now existentialized what happens to people after they die? Immortality, and so forth. And there the answer is really interesting and strange, about two-thirds of the way down. Forever, the boys chimed in. Well, and may the dear boy's memory live forever, said Alyosha again, added again with feelings. Forever, the boys chimed in again. This is the chorus. And then Kolya says, Karamazov, can it be true, as they teach us in church, that we shall all rise again from the dead and shall live and see each other again, all Ilusha too? Now, what do you make of that? That's a tough one for Alyosha. He's given them an existentialized story that it's already forever true that they will always be together forever and with Ilusha together forever, in the sense that this experience is sacred and nothing will change it. Can he promise them that they'll meet in the afterlife and be happily together? No, he can't do that. He doesn't know that. Physics and chemistry don't tell him that there can't be the afterlife for the soul. And physics and chemistry had better not. But neither can religion tell him that there will be an afterlife for the soul. I mean, it's physics and chemistry, and it's beyond existentializing. The only thing he can existentialize is that at least in this life, there is a kind of immortality, a kind of eternity that's possible. So, let me see now, let me get where we are. Okay, they've been changed forever. They've got eternity and time. Now, what they've got is they'll be with each other in Elisha forever. That's all you can say. But let me just frame it for what you can't say. I mean, physics and chemistry can't say anything, but neither can the Greek Orthodox Christianity of Dostoevsky say anything. Zosima says things, but that's because Zosima is still sort of half inside the magical side of Christianity, the belief in a kind of Plato-like God and so forth. And belief just mainly in the sort of, either he takes the Christian story literally or he uses it literally to help people. I don't know which. But there's an interesting moment way back on 58 where the peasant woman comes in whose child has died. You remember what Zosima tells her? No reason why you should. A million events have happened in the meantime. You do remember. Yes, you remember that. Amazing. Okay, right. He tells her at the bottom of 58 and that your son is one of the angels of God, and he looks down from there at you and sees you and rejoices in your tears and points them out to the Lord God. Well, according to Dostoevsky, there's no way that Zosima could know that anybody could know that. But there's just nothing we know about what happens after people die. And Dostoevsky thinks that if you've existentialized the forever and made life meaningful for people in a community around a loving event, that's all they need in this life. So then what happens is very peculiar. And I mean, I'm putting my kind of spin on it. It could be completely wrong. You have to decide for yourself. On 729, what happens next is, after Kolya asks the question, Alyosha's response is really strange. Certainly we shall all rise again. Certainly we shall see each other, and shall tell each other with joy and gladness all that has happened. Alyosha answered, half laughing, half enthusiastic. Now, I don't know what that... I mean, you can say, wow, look at that. He's like Zosima. He believes that we're all going to live forever in some other heavenly world, and look down on this one and meet each other again. But there's something funny about him telling it half laughing, half enthusiastic. Well, let me just say, and then you could say, I read it as, look, I told you all you need to know about eternity and forever. You and Elisha and each other are together forever. What more do you want to know? But, of course, you can put it that way if you want to. But he doesn't go into it. He doesn't make a big fuss about it. He drops it. Kolya says, how wonderful. And he says, let's go eat some pancakes. And right after that, he says, well, now we finished talking and go to the funeral dinner and so forth. Don't be disturbed at our eating pancakes. It's an old custom, and there's something nice in that. Now, but I mean, if you want to say that all of a sudden Alyosha sounds like Zosima and believes in the afterlife, there's nothing that Dostoevsky's got in here that prevents you from saying it. But I don't think you should think that Dostoevsky is telling you that somehow, that he knows that. You want to say something? Yeah. Well, instead of enthusiastic, ecstatic. How will it help us one way or the other? Like what? Yeah, I think it's the same for this purpose. He's really, really happy. And he's very happy about the fact that he's now established the so to speak, immortality of this love. But I don't think we are supposed to conclude that he's now established that they're really going to meet again in the afterlife. It would be just, it doesn't fit with the rest of the book. I mean, he has never made any claims based on revelation, ever. He only makes claims based on, say, phenomenology. That is, these existential experiences of childhood memories, of confession, of, what else? There's so many, of miracles and so forth. But he never cites the Bible when he does it. He just says, look, these experiences exist. But he can't say, look, experiences of the afterlife exist. We've heard lots of reports about that. So I think he's saying, Look, I think it's a funny way of always, remember, whenever he does anything, he always gives you this hit over the head. Look, I just did a miracle, he'll say with Grushenka. And I think what he's saying is, look, I just existentialized the afterlife. That's what he's doing there. He's bringing, otherwise people might miss that this whole story about the forever is meant to be all that we can ever know existentially about whether there's an afterlife or not. And it's enough. If you understood this, you wouldn't be in this kind of despairing upsetness that Mrs. Holocaust and old Karamazov are in. Anyway, that's my reading of it. But I admit you have to bring your whole understanding of the book to bear on that sentence to know what it means. Okay, so anybody want to say anything about that? Yeah. No, I think that as the Catholics in the class know and have come and told me at office hours, it looks like a reference to the what? I can't say it. I can't say it. Well, never mind. Somebody say it. Eucharist. I got it. Okay, that is, it's the eating of the bread and the drinking of the wine, I think, probably. I mean, it's just another piece of the hitting you over the head. I've created a church. We've got a church service. We've got 12 people. We're at a rock. We're eating the blood. Well, we're eating the body and not the blood, it turns out. But we're taking part in this special kind of communion with the lived. He can't say anything further because he's not going to say that they are eating the blood and body of Markel, who is the Christ figure in the book. That's too weird for Dostoevsky to existentialize. I can even say one more thing about it. Well, not about the pancakes directly, but there's a funny thing going on here, which I never understood, and which maybe I don't understand now. I mean, I tell you these things that I don't know for sure because sometimes people come in and tell me in office hours better ways of understanding it. Why do you suppose there's a fuss being made that although Alyosha wanted to be buried at the stone, the father says, and gets very upset about it, that they're burying him in the churchyard, in the graveyard instead? Why shouldn't they bury him at the stone? Why shouldn't they? After all, there are martyrs buried under the cathedrals, and you might think that the best way to found a church is to found it on a martyr. And Alyosha died, not really for love, but he died full of love, and in a way it was his brain fever that made him so loving. That's always the way it looks at Dostoevsky, because you have to be crazy to get out of being the selfish, natural being that human beings are. But so why not bury him under the stone? Well, after thinking about it a while, and I think that can't be an accident. You know, Dostoevsky goes out of his way. Shall we read it just to show you where it is? There's a big fuss at that point about the stone. If anybody finds it, let me know. It ought to be on 724, 725 somewhere when they're carrying the body. 723 bottom. Oh yeah. Well, no, I don't see it yet. I don't want to. Yes, I see it now, about 8 lines from the bottom. I don't want him to be buried in the courtyard, the captain wailed suddenly. I'll bury him by the stone, by our stone. Alyosha told me I won't let him be carried away. And he's been saying that for 3 days. What an idea to bury him by an unholy stone, says the landlady. And the landlady prevails, and they don't bury him by the stone. Well, there's that big fuss. What's going on? Well, I think Dostoevsky wants to separate, again, the kind of masochistic emphasis on death and suffering that you might find in a kind of Christianity he doesn't like from the kind that he does. So I think he wants to put the emphasis purely on the church formed by love. And he wants to put he could have founded the church on the crucifixion, on the death. But he wants to found the church on the incarnation, where love comes into the world. And he wants to say what's crucial is the incarnation, and whether there's a martyr and whether there's death involved in the founding of the church is accidental. It's not something intends to existentialize as part of the necessary structure of the church, that it be based on death and suffering. I think, because he does seem to want to say, I'll start with Alicia Stone, but then I want Alicia out of the story, and that is his death out of the story. Remember, there's plenty of talk about Alicia at the Stone and his love and how they all loved him and he all loved them, and there's no talk about the fact that he died. Okay, that's what I think, but it isn't important. This book is complicated enough and deep enough. There's always things that are sort of mysterious, and maybe Dostoevsky is always so clear and so sure of what he thinks that there may be some place where he says something about it. Okay, anything about that? There's still more things to cover, so I think I should go on and do them. Unless anybody has any objection. We have time, but I'm ready to, yeah. That sounds good. I think that makes sense. That's good. Yeah, that's too sudden. That's unholy, as the landlady says. People aren't ready to take over the existentialized side and drop the traditional second stage Christianity, where there's a special holy place to bury people and so forth. I think Dostoevsky thinks that's unnecessary, and in the third stage, we'll get beyond it. But I think you're right. I think he's just sensible enough to think that you don't suddenly throw these religious people into an existentialized post institutional kind of Christianity yet. Good. That sounds plausible. Okay, let's go through the last move. There's still two things to do. It's just amazing how, and I say, he does so many things in the last book. Okay. All through the book now, we've got to do what remember the next question is, what does it really mean to be a Karamazov? Because in some way, everybody in the book is a Karamazov. In some way, we're all Karamazovs. They're just more extreme cases of it. So, and that is to be a human self. Is to be a Karamazov. And what is it to be a human self? Well, Dostoevsky still hasn't sorted that out. He's purposely made it rather confusing. And he's not going to sort it out till the very end. But I've been hinting at it. But let's go back and look at the various things that you've heard about the Karamazovs in the course of the book, starting on 215. The third sentence. My brothers are destroying themselves, he went on. This is Alyosha. My father, too, and they're destroying others with them. It's the primitive force of the Karamazovs. As Father Paisi said the other day, a crude, unbridled, earthly force. Does the Spirit of God move above that force? Even that I don't know. I only know I, too, am a Karamazov. Well, that is pretty hard on the Karamazovs. And is that the final story? That would seem to say that the self has a dark side, and the dark side is prominent in people like the Karamazovs anyway, and that maybe everybody is really sinful, and the dark side is prominent. It looks pretty bleak. So being a Karamazov is the side of the self that is base, and in Dmitri terms, and that we're too broad to ever get an equilibrium. And this is on 660. The next time it comes around that I know of, it probably comes around other times too. Now this is the prosecutor. Now the prosecutor, the whole trial is, and I have time to say a word about the trial, so why don't I take a parenthesis, but then we'll get to the prosecutor. The trial is a kind of big joke from Dostoevsky's point of view. A joke in the sense that it's a bunch of psychological arguments about whether Dmitri committed this crime or not, whether he could have committed, whether he's the kind of person who could have committed this crime. It's all an attempt to understand people's motives. but a very superficial attempt, which he thinks what psychology is, as opposed to existential thinking, which he doesn't have a name for, but what he's doing, which he doesn't think is psychology. Although he says on the back of this book or some translation that he considers himself a psychologist. I think that's the wrong way to put it, because then what are we going to call those people at the trial? But anyway, remember the joke, for instance, I haven't got it marked here because I didn't know I'd have time to talk about it, that they have this fuss about when Dmitri walks in and they decide whether he walks in looking straight ahead of himself, and then one of the prosecutors interprets that. I don't know if you could find it. Can anybody find it? I doubt it. Says that it's important to notice that he didn't look at the jury, and it was the jury who had his whole fate, and other ones say he looked at the other direction because that's where the women were, and he was sort of incorrigible womanizer. And they have all these theories about what direction he was looking. Can we find it? I don't know. Let's try, because it's my best example of the fact that he's making fun of the whole trial. Of course, in effect, the whole trial is obviously a disaster because they get the wrong conclusion. They sentence Dmitri as a murderer. But let's see if we can find where they are. Help me find where they're arguing about which way Dmitri looked, because it's pretty funny. $6.85? $6.35. Oh yeah, there, I have it marked around there. Okay, so where are those? So, oh yeah, here we are. That he's saying, as to my opinion, learned colleagues, I'm in the middle paragraph, the Moscow doctor added ironically in conclusion, that the prisoner would, on entering the court, have naturally looked at the ladies and not straight before him. I will only say that apart from the playfulness of this theory, it is radically unsound. Though I fully agree with that the prisoner on entering the court, where his fate will be decided, would naturally look straight before him in that fixed way, and that may really be a sign of his abnormal mental condition. At the same time, I maintain that he would naturally not look to the left at the ladies, but to the right to find his legal advisor, on whose help all his hopes rest, and on whose defense all his future depends. The doctor expressed his opinion. And then it goes on, but the unexpected pronouncements of doctors, whatever his name is, gave the last touch of comedy to the difference of opinion between the experts. So it's a comedy. And what they all miss, and why are they all wrong? Why is psychology all wrong, according to Dostoevsky? I think it's because they are all operating within a certain conception of human nature, which is roughly that people are selfish, looking out for their own interests. They're trying to find out what interest Dmitri is looking out for when he walks into the courtroom, but they're asking sort of which selfish motive is he following? And the really important question about people is how they can be transformed. But they have no clue, any of these people in the trial, in the judicial system, that people can be reborn and become, that they are indeed all sinful, that psychology is a study of sinful people. But what's interesting is existential something or other, whatever, as I say, Dostoevsky has no name for it, let's call it existentializing, which is interested in the things that happen that enable people to be reborn, like the mysterious visitor when he confesses, like Grushenka when she's looked at by Alyosha, like childhood memories. Everything that's important, psychology knows nothing about, because that's all in a sacred dimension. Psychology is sort of the physics and chemistry of the soul, but they've got it all wrong, because the physics and chemistry of the soul just doesn't get at what's important about the soul. I think I just tell you why, in fact, you had to go through all this juridical nonsense, is because Dostoevsky has something there, a chip on his shoulder, he wants to bring out. But now, that was an aside. We're back here to the prosecutor. But it wasn't a useless aside, because the prosecutor is obviously going to be wrong. So here's a wrong view of the Karamazovs. The first story is wrong, the Alyosha's early view. at least let's hope it's wrong, that to be a Karamazov is to be base and selfish and awful. And now we get one in the middle of 60, which is closer, because he was the broad Karamazov character. This is Dmitri. That's just what I'm leading up to. Capable of combining the most incongruous contradictions, and capable of the greatest heights and the greatest depths. Remember the brilliant remark made by the young observer who was seeing the Karamazov family at close quarters, Mr. Rakitin. And you should begin to wonder whether this guy who thinks that Rakitin has got the brilliant last word could have it right. But it's not terribly wrong. The sense of their own degradation is as essential to these reckless, unbridled natures as the sense of their generosity. And that's true, the prosecutor says. They need continually this unnatural mixture, two extremes at the same moment, or they are miserable and dissatisfied, and their existence is incomplete. They are wide as Mother Russia, and they include everything and put up with everything. Well, it's somehow so almost right and so mixed up. They need this unnatural mixture. Well, Dmitri doesn't want the unnatural mixture. For one thing, it's a natural mixture. They have impulses both good and bad. But they don't need and want to have impulses both good and bad. They want to be able to get them together in some positive way. That's Dmitri's whole hope, and he's in the despair of negative R2 because he can't get the dark side and the light side, the base side and the noble side together. And so they have these contradictions. But the point is, for Dostoevsky, the question is there a way of taking a stand on these contradictions which make them not be unnatural and not be bad? And of course the secular can't deal with that. But of course the sacred can deal with that. There ought to be a way, there must be a way in the book to transform the Karamazov into something positive and good. That's what the whole saving story is about. And all of us as Karamazovs. And of course that is what's happening. What Rakitin is describing is what the self is like before it's transformed by love. It's what Dmitri is sort of like at the beginning of the book. Then there's a side which is base, sensual, involved, impulsive, and but that's taken as something negative. But there's something okay about being sensual, involved, impulsive. In fact, it's absolutely essential, because if you aren't impulsive and involved, you can't ever do anything good. Remember what happens. Another way to describe the split in the self is the split between the philosophical, detached, rational side. No, wait. That's not the way to put it. From the detached, rational side, you can see this in Ivan, the impulsive, involved, sensual side looks like the dark side. But from Dostoevsky's point of view, it's just as important, maybe more important, to be sensual, involved, impulsive, have the recklessness of the Karamazov, as it's described in one of those speeches I just read, I think, if not there, somewhere. It's important to have that, because it's with that kind of impulsive recklessness that people show their kind of love. Otherwise, they get reflective and self-protective and selfish and like Ivan. Yeah. Wait, I can't hear you. You got to talk loud. Okay. I can't. Somebody repeat what she's saying, or you come up here, or I'll go over there. You got to be really close to me for me to hear you. Here. Okay. Now, tell me.
So do you think that's why the pigeon thing tells Dmitri that he's like a child and vegetarian, he's up and
Who tells him he's like a child, Dmitri? They tell. Who says he's like a child? I don't remember that. Tell us about it. Okay. Go ahead. Suppose, let's say that Dmitri is like a child in the sense that he's completely impulsive and goes after both the good with all his might, and then he goes after the Sodom side sensuality with all his might. He's just totally involved and unreflective and unrational most of the time. Well, okay, while you're looking now, oh, you got it, perfect. Okay, we're on page 396. The peasant is talking. I don't even know where we are, but let me start reading. So you see, sir, who it is hell's for, said Andrew, whipping up the left horse. But you're like a little child. He's talking to Dmitri? Ah, yeah. You're like a little child. What? Ah, now I see where we are. Yes, that's how we look on you. And though you're quick-tempered, sir, yet God will forgive you for your kind heart. That's a very important quote. And you, do you forgive me? Okay, yeah, do you forgive me? Yes, he says, you never done me any harm. No, for everyone. You here alone on the road, will you forgive me for everyone? And then that's one of his big things. But the important thing is, I'm going to mark it, 396. Yeah, that's emphasizing the fact that there's something very positive to being impulsive and irrational. What's again, 396? 396. Okay, so you begin to see that there are lots of different ways of interpreting the two sides of the Karamazov. You can see it as bad. You can see it as impulsive, base, selfish, irrational, but you can also see the same thing as good. But it only will become really good if it's transformed by love. I mean, that's the important thing. I mean, Dmitri's now got the self together. He's not torn anymore now that he loves Grushenka, and she's passed the love on to him that Alyosha passed on to her, presumably. And that means that what's been called the earthy, in an insulting sort of way, is now something positive. And what seemed to be opposed to the lofty and spiritual now seems to be a component of the lofty and spiritual, so that you have to get to one side is earthy and one side is heavenly, and they both can be positive, and they both can be important and support each other. And that's the kind of love of life that you need to have. Even Ivan has it for a while, but he ends up, because he says he's going to lose it when he's 30. And the recklessness of the Karamazovs that I mentioned is 484. I see that I wrote it down, so let me go look for it. Okay, and this is more about this kind of recklessness and how it's related to doing good things. On 484, about 3/4 of the way down, this is Dmitri. And he felt a passion of pity such as he had never known before was rising in his heart. And he wanted to do something for the babe. He wanted to do all this at once, regardless of obstacles, with the recklessness of the Karamazov. But this recklessness can be a bad thing, but it can also be this very important good thing. And as soon as you get in touch with the love of the universe, then the more reckless and impulsive, the better. Yeah. Page 708. Huh. Well, I think I think you're misreading that. Let's find it. The way I heard it just now, we have to look at the context. He doesn't want them to be able to take away his God, because if he didn't have God, he would rebel, because it's God that enables him to suffer and go to Siberia. Am I missing it? Well, I don't know. We have to find the context. Let's find it. Where's what he just said? Okay, the hour of judgment has come. I feel the hand of God upon me, and so forth and so forth. I repeat that I'm innocent. I didn't kill him, but I lived like a beast, and so forth and so forth. I don't believe the doctors. I'm perfectly sane. I'll pray for you. I'll be a better man, and so forth. But spare me now. Let's see. I'll break my sword over my head. I'll kiss the pieces. But spare me. Do not rob me of my God. I know myself, I shall rebel. My heart is heavy. Now, what would it be for them to rob him of his God? I don't see how they can do that. I don't really understand the passage. Help. Yes. How could they do that? But he'll say, yes, but Grushenko's going to go to Siberia with him, and in Siberia he's going to be connected to all the prisoners. So I don't see how, all I can see is, don't view me as a murderer. Because if I were a murderer, I would be, that's right. I would be disconnected from the connectedness. Don't see me. I think I can't do better. I don't see how they can make him into a murderer, but it's something like, if you condemn me and if you make me into a murderer, then I would be out of the connectedness, I would lose God, and I would rebel against that. In other words, I wouldn't let it happen. I won't let it happen that you declare me a murderer that is outside of the connectedness, that is unrelated to God. That's pretty good, given the weirdness of the passage, and that I've never thought about it before. I'm going to write it down and think about it some more. But I think that's right. But it certainly is a strange thing. Do not rob me of my God. I shall rebel. I see. Well, I think the answer is constantly. I'm beginning to understand it. He never says he's willing to admit that he's a murderer, because he isn't a murderer. And he's saying, in effect, don't declare me outside of the loving connectedness, because I couldn't stand it to live outside the loving connectedness. And so when he says to Alyosha that he wants to go to Siberia, he wants to go to Siberia because he desired the death of old Karamazov. He's still feeling guilty for that. He was tempted to go outside the connectedness and commit the murder. But he keeps saying, but I didn't. I'm not that kind of person. I would never do that. And so he's saying both things, no? If he's condemned as a murderer. Okay, but he's got this funny reservation. I'm willing to go to Siberia because, this is what he's saying to the jury, you're helping. He's saying, I'm willing to go to Siberia. I don't mind your judgment, but don't condemn me as a murderer. Condemn me as somebody who desired to kill his father, and I'll be glad to go because I need to suffer for what I did, desiring the death of my father. But don't tell me that I'm outside the connectedness and that I've killed my father. I couldn't stand that. That sounds right. Okay, now we're back to that interesting quote. Thanks, we're learning things. So now we're ready for the last. We're still talking about what it is to be a Karamazov, but it's getting clear. The best thing you can do is get in touch with the love in the universe that will bring together the contradictions, which will then become reinforcing each other instead of destructive. And the way to understand it is, one side will be the earthly and one side will be the heavenly. When you see the two factors that way, you don't see, that's the spiritual and the sensual. You don't see them as opposed. And that's what you've learned in the course of the book as far as Karamazovs are concerned. Now, let's go back to the boys. How does Dostoevsky tell you that finally the Karamazov thing is a positive thing? And the more you're a Karamazov, the better. And the fact that we're all Karamazovs is great. What he's doing, and he does this on 729, Alyosha is still saying at the top, may his memory live forever in our hearts. Yes, yes, forever. And then we get the part on eating the pancakes. And now we're almost at the end of the book. And what happens? We're going to go hand in hand, he says. And always so. All our lives hand in hand. That's still the forever. Now comes the new thing. Hooray for Karamazov, Kolya cried once more. And once more the boys took up the cry. Hooray for Karamazov. So the last thing in the book is the cheer for the Karamazov. And it's just a subtle point that the other translation that I used last time was wrong. It says, it adds one more sentence that isn't in the book. It says, hooray for Karamazov. Oh, wait. Yes, no, sorry. And once more the boy. That would be stupid to say what I just said. Take it back. Cross out hooray for Karamazov. I'm telling you the wrong story. The right translation doesn't end with hooray for Karamazov. Dostoevsky's got so many balls in the air, he's got to keep track of all of them. Yes, he wants to say hooray for Karamazov. He's got to do eternity, and that is immortality. He's got to get a church, he's done it. He wants to get immortality, that is eternity and time, he's done it. He wants to say, I've saved the Karamazov self and turned it into something positive. He just did it. Hooray for Karamazov. Now, why is the last sentence got to be, and it is in the Russian, and once more the boys took up the cry. What's the last issue? That the boys are going to go out into the world and that they are going to begin the transformation that will make the new star arise in the east. It doesn't stop with the Karamazov. It's just the start. The picture Dostoevsky has is that all these boys will go out and they'll found their churches and they'll get people to love each other, and bit by bit it will transform everybody and they'll all love each other. And so the end of the book is he's sort of fulfilled his promise as best he can. He's given you a hint of how this kind of transformation, in which the third possibility, namely the Russian Orthodox Church magicalized and existentialized, can transform everybody, so that, remember, it isn't the church will become a state, but the state will become a church. That's all in the boys took up the exclamation. That's the promise. That's what Dostoevsky wants all this to come out to be. As far as I'm concerned, that's the end of the book. There's not another sentence. In fact, there's one sentence too many in this translation. But anybody got anything to say about that? Well, I have other announcements I want to make, but I wanted to make sure we finished the book so you have everything in place when you're writing your papers. And unless anybody else has anything to say, we've done more than I hoped. We've got even some new quotes and new issues. Okay, well, let me say, so now, that's done. Let's, now, for important business. One, I want to repeat, don't forget, once you've got your paper handed in on Monday, you've got to leave some time to read. There isn't all that much reading in The Twilight of the Idols, because that's what we're going to discuss on Tuesday. But now I want to talk about the exam. You've got the time and places now of the two exams on what I handed out. But I want to say something about, because people are asking about, the way we've changed from the paper to having an essay question. I want to describe the whole exam, and then so you can see what's going on. It was going to be a 2-hour exam, and you were going to write a third paper. So let me tell you first about the first 2 hours of the exam. That's going to be quotes from the book, and you're being asked. So I'll tell you this again right before on the last day. But I mean, you're being asked to tell the significance of who says this in what book, which should be obvious. It's not tricky. And what is the significance of the quote? That means, why did we pick this? Why is this an important quote in the book that reveals something important about what's going on in the book? I'll give you some examples on the last day, so this doesn't sound so abstract. And you've got to do 10 out of 12 in 2 hours, which means about a blue book page quote for the 10 quotes. And then you have another hour still, because it's a 3-hour exam, and that's the essay question. Now, to make the essay question as much like a normal paper writing question, we're going to give you a list of possible questions beforehand. You've probably had this in some other courses, some of you, maybe not freshmen. We're not the only ones. We didn't invent this. We're going to you get a chance to think about the essay question, and you get a chance to think about several essay questions, and then we're going to choose one or two, probably two, and you get to write what you thought about those essay questions. Any questions? You're all looking puzzled. Am I not being clear? Yeah. You'll write on one. Yeah, we'll give you a choice. I mean, now I'm going beyond what we've decided yet, but let's say we give you a choice of 5 questions to think about, of which we put 2 on the exam, of which you write about 1. You understand that? Yeah. That's a good question. I guess the answer. What do you think? They're against it. I think the problem isn't that you got the book, but what else you might write in the book. I mean, you could write in microprint. My daughter can write microprint. Your whole paper on the last page of the book. So no, you have to remember things. That means you can't put in direct quotes, obviously, because you can't be expected to remember direct quotes. That's the advantage of having the book, is people could put in direct quotes like in a paper. I don't think we made up our minds. Remind me to discuss it when we're meeting. It's a good question. I mean, I'm inclined to say you can have your book, and if you want to write your paper in microprint, that's okay with me. But we'll see. Anything else? Because there's one more question I know that's lurking in some of your minds, because somebody asked me this. How much are we going to weight the exam? Before we said each paper was 1/3, and the exam was 1/4, and the exam was 1/4. We're going to have to weight the exam more now because it's counting as the 3rd paper. Or maybe the best thing would do is just to weight the 3rd part of the exam more, in weighting the whole exam, in putting it in as 1/3 of the grade. We have to figure that out. But in some way, now that we've put that extra weight on the exam of putting the 3rd paper in it, we have to, as much as possible, treat it as if it had something to do with the 3rd paper. Okay, anybody got any problems with any of that? Because if you do, you should tell us. We'll think about it. Not. Okay then. Good. Write your papers. See you next Tuesday. No, wait. Here, a question that I guess I wasn't clear about. The quotes on the exam will be from all the books. That is, from Kierkegaard, from the brothers, from all the various Nietzsche books. And then the essays, I wasn't clear about that, won't just be on the brothers, but will be comparing the brothers. I mean, it won't be just on Nietzsche. It'll be comparing Nietzsche to Kierkegaard or Dostoevsky on some issue.
And maybe for the quotes, they cannot have the books, but for the essay, there will be 2 blue books. One blue book would be like the quotes, and the second blue book with the books.
That's interesting. I have to think about that. First, turn this off.